In 2010, the Minnesota Twins celebrated their golden anniversary with their eyes on the future in the newest wonder of the baseball world. And as Target Field opened, they celebrated a memorable past by honoring the 50 greatest Minnesota Twins. Join us now for Chapter 1, the men who made their marks at an outdoor ballpark in Bloomington.
In 1961, when the Washington Senators were reborn as the Minnesota Twins, the Upper Midwest quickly embraced a new set of heroes.
400, Major League homer for Harmon.
In the 50 years since, for the generations that followed, the faces changed, and the venues did too. There were Frosty Malts, Homer Hankies, and now the splendor of Target Field. And through it all, men who played the game found a special place in Twins territory.
Puckett swings and hits a blast! Deep left center, way back!
Individually, they were Hall of Famers and MVPs, batting champions, and homegrown stars who lit up the hometown stage. Collectively, they form an elite group, and their achievements are celebrated as we honor the 50 greatest Minnesota Twins on Fox Sports North.
Hi everyone, I'm Dick Bramer at Target Field, where the opening season at this spectacular new ballpark was as grand as could be. And the timing could not have been any better for the Twins as they christened their new home with a season-long celebration of their 50th anniversary.
One of the greatest hitters of all time, number 10, Carew. As part of the festivities, the organization honored the 50 greatest Minnesota Twins, players and managers selected by a panel of voters who followed the team over the course of their 50 seasons in Twins territory. Here on Fox Sports North, the best of the best had their stories written and narrated by a wide variety of professionals, from former teammates and media members to a Prairie Home companion and the governor of Minnesota.
For the next hour, we'll take you back in time to an era when the stars were shining bright at Metropolitan Stadium in Bloomington.
Part of a Cuban connection fostered by the Griffith organization, Camilo Pascual was one of the top pitchers in the American League in the early years of the Minnesota Twins. His achievements on the mound elevated him to the level of the second greatest pitcher in franchise history, behind only Walter Johnson. Pascual's curveball was considered the best in baseball, and he had the chance to show it off in one of the All-Star games in 1961 when he pitched 3 innings of hitless ball in Boston. He also had a good fastball, fine control, and most of all, a knack and know-how for pitching. Beginning in 1961, Pascual led the American League in strikeouts for 3 consecutive seasons. He won 20 games in 1962, pitching a 3-hit shutout in the final game of the season, and topped that in 1963 with 21 victories. Handsome and personable, Pascual combined his feats on the field with a friendly smile off it, and was one of the most popular Twins of his time. Stu Thornley, Minnesota baseball historian.
Known as Kitty, a play on his name as well as recognition of his quickness and grace that earned him 16 straight Rolling Gold Gloves. Jim Kaat was one of the top southpaws in the American League. With a fastball good enough for him to once strike out 19 batters in a minor league game and a sharp curve, Kitty was one of the young stars who came to Minnesota from Washington when the Twins moved here in 1961. He won 18 games in 1963 and did it again 2 years later as he tied a franchise record set by Walter Johnson in 1910 by starting 42 games. Kaat's biggest win came on September 26, 1965 in Washington.
Strike 3! The Twins are on the
Kitty outdueled the Dodgers' Sandy Koufax in the second game of the World Series, and on only 2 days' rest, matched up against Koufax again in the decisive Game 7. The 1966 season was his best as he won 25 games and pitched more than 300 innings, accomplishments that won him the Pitcher of the Year award in the American League. Kaat pitched a total of 25 seasons in the major leagues and racked up more than 280 wins. With speaking skills as smooth as his delivery on the mound, Kaat was a radio personality in the Twin Cities, and after his retirement as a player, became one of the top baseball announcers in the major leagues. Stu Thornley, Minnesota baseball historian.
Allison steps in. Whitey Ford goes into his windup, comes in with the pitch. There's a long drive heading out toward left. Home run for Bob Allison.
In the early days of Twins baseball, Bob Allison could bring the crowd to its feet. On a team that played long ball, Harmon Killebrew may have owned center stage, but Allison was a muscular co-star. The two, in a 1-2 punch, feared by pitchers in American League cities across the land. Together, they made headlines. One time, they made history. But these Minnesota Twins were far different players. At a strapping 6'4", number 4 cast an imposing shadow of his own. Outgoing, with those rugged good looks ready-made for a baseball card, Allison was a college football star at Kansas who tackled the summer game with a need to get dirty. Big Bob was our supersized Charlie Hustle, heads up and athletic as he chased the extra base and made middle infielders tremble at the sight of this oncoming freight train. On a slide, or a swing, or a throw from an outfield corner, his was a power game, and his legion of fans relished every minute of it. Among his greatest hits are a Rookie of the Year award with the Senators in 1959, 256 career home runs, and 3 trips to the All-Star game. When he lost his battle with ataxia in 1995 and a generation lost one of its heroes, he was mourned, and he was remembered for his strength, for a tenacious style of play that made him a Met Stadium favorite, and for the catch in Game 2 of the '65 series, when Bob Allison brought the crowd to its feet.
And Lefevre lines to left. But Bob Allison makes a miraculous catch as he skids in the mud.
Paul Hill, Fox Sports North.
Sturdy and steady behind the plate, Earl Batty was one of the top catchers in baseball in the early years of the Twins. For 3 straight years, Batty was awarded a Gold Glove. With his quick release and powerful right arm, Batty let opposing base runners know they had to stay alert. In one season, 1962, he picked a total of 13 runners off third or first base. More than his skill in the field, Batty the batter was outstanding too. He hit 26 homers and drove in more than 80 runs in 1963, a year in which he was the starting catcher for the American League for the 3rd straight All-Star game. He started one more Midsummer Classic in the magical season of 1965 when the Twins won the pennant and went to the World Series. Though remembered as slow-footed, Batty was an outstanding athlete who once turned down an offer to play basketball for the Harlem Globetrotters. Considered the best Twins catcher for more than 40 years until Joe Mauer came along, the Earl of Minnesota baseball remains a favorite of early Twins fans. Stu Thornley, Minnesota baseball historian.
You're watching the 50 greatest Minnesota Twins on Fox Sports North.
The 50 Greatest Twins on Fox Sports North is brought to you by McDonald's. Hot chocolates and hot mochas are the perfect chocolate treat. By Carsoup.com. Buy, research, sell. by Quick Trip, home of the no-fee ATM, and by Arby's, home of the new value menu starting at just $1.
As an organization, the Minnesota Twins have always built from within, achieving success at the major league level by harvesting the fruits of a productive farm system. But there have been notable exceptions, and the pennant winners of 1965 and the division champions of 1969 and 1970 were reinforced by players who began their professional careers somewhere else.
The 1965 Twins had many stars on the way to a World Series showdown with the Dodgers. Killebrew, Oliva, Allison, Kaat, Batty, Mudcat Grant, and Zoilo Versalles. And then there was the unlikeliest hero of all, and quite possibly the least appreciated these days, an aging pitcher named Al Worthington. Worthington had been a pretty good journeyman relief pitcher until 1964, when he began the season in Cincinnati. 7 innings and 14 hits later, at the age of 35, he was without a job. Perhaps it was destiny. Worthington, who was born in Alabama, had played semi-pro ball in Fulda, Minnesota way back in 1950. Later, between 1953 and 1960, he would spend part or all of 4 seasons with the Minneapolis Millers of the American Association, winning 3 games and saving 1 more in the Junior World Series in 1955. And now the Twins picked him up for a song, and Worthington was better than ever. Forced to rely more on guile than heat, he added new weapons to his arsenal. You never knew whether he would throw over the top or sidearm. At 37, he unveiled a knuckleball. In that first season with the Twins, his ERA of 1.37 stood as the Twins' best ever until Joe Nathan's 1.33 in 2008. And in the championship season with Minnesota, he not only saved 21 games, but won 10, and his ERA was 2.13. He also pitched 4 scoreless innings in the World Series. Worthington wound up pitching 6 remarkable seasons for the Twins before his final year in 1969 at the age of 40. Now at 81, he's retired and living in Alabama. Mike Gelfand, Minneapolis Tribune.
Jim Grant played for 7 clubs in 14 Major League seasons, winning 145 and losing 119 games. But fate has permanently connected him to the Minnesota Twins. His only 20-win big league season helped the Twins into their first World Series in 1965, and some people said the Twins won the American League pennant that year because Mudcat was no longer pitching against the Twins. When Minnesota acquired the 28-year-old, he was barely a 500 pitcher, but his record against the Twins franchise was 22-6. The team was happy to have him on its side. Mudcat went on to win 50 games for the Twins, and when it was all over, nearly half of his career wins were either for or against Minnesota. Jim Grant grew up poor in Florida, where he was a remarkable athlete. He was offered a college football scholarship and played baseball instead. He played for Fargo during his first pro season in 1954, winning 21 Northern League games with his combination of fastball, breaking pitches, and off-speed deliveries. Driven by his intense competitiveness, he was soon in the big leagues. Jim Grant's finest moment came in the 1965 World Series, where he beat the Dodgers twice with his pitching and batting skills. Charming, extroverted, and ebullient, sports writers loved him, and he stayed in the media spotlight during off-seasons with his Mudcat and the Kittens nightclub act. Jim Grant is an indelible part of Twins history. Jim Thielman, author, Cool of the Evening.
Pitchers are pitchers, gentlemen are gentlemen. Jim Perry was both, a pitcher and a gentleman. Perry was distinguishable for how he worked hitters on the mound. A Cy Young Award winner in 1970, it wasn't merely fastball and curveball for Perry. There was a notable professionalism to his pitching. He was tall, he was debonair, he had great presence, he was a true craftsman. Billy Martin, the Minnesota Twins manager in 1969, knew that when he dispatched Perry to the mound every 4 days, he would get a professional effort. So did opposing batters. Perry was workmanlike. He was all business. His stuff and his know-how was good enough to win most days, and he knew it. His focus was winning. If you beat Perry, you could feel a great accomplishment because you earned it. He gave you nothing. He was a wonderful competitor. Off the field, Perry carried himself with total class. He got his rest. He was always prepared. He advised young teammates but was never pushy. He was a consummate teammate and leader. The Minnesota Twins organization today is proud to have him as a representative because he represents the best of their 50-year history. Jim is also a loving family man, a solid guy to emulate in every respect. He was exemplary on the mound, and he was exemplary in life. It was a privilege to watch him in both. Charlie Walters, teammate pitcher in 1969.
The Twins ever had a player that loved the game more than Cesar Tovar? Owner Calvin Griffith was once asked what was the best trade he ever made. Without hesitation, he said getting Cesar Tovar from the Reds in the winter of 1964. The Twins spotted Tovar in the Reds minor league system where his future was blocked at second base by a young guy named Pete Rose. They dangled left-handed pitcher Jerry Arrigo in front of the Reds, and the deal was done. Tovar promised the Twins he could play anywhere, and he was true to his word. In September of 1968, with his team out of the pennant race and the attendance lagging, Tovar played a different position in each of the 9 innings against the Oakland A's, striking out young Reggie Jackson in the process. Under Billy Martin's management in 1969, he played 158 games at 5 different positions. He scored 99 runs, drove in 52, and stole a career-high 45 bases, often teaming with Rod Carew and even Harmon Killebrew on double and triple steals. He spent 8 of his 12 major league years as a Twin and died of cancer in Venezuela in 1994 at the age of 54. Over the 50 years, the Twins have had a lot of versatile players, but no one else quite like Cesar Tovar. Dave Mona, Minneapolis Tribune.
You're watching the 50 greatest Minnesota Twins on Fox Sports North. Seasons in Minnesota, the Twins have had 5 players win the American League's MVP award. 2 of them are in the Hall of Fame. 2 more someday could be. But the first was a young shortstop who led the Twins to a pennant in 1965.
So the Twins have runners at first and third with no outs. And the batter is Versalles.
Baseball and life chipped away at Zoilo Versalles. He began his major league career at age 19 and was done a dozen years later. By 1995, he was gone. But he made one gallant rush during the 1965 season when the Minnesota Twins played in their first World Series. They would not have made it there without Zoilo, all 5 feet 9 inches of him. The 65 Twins had injuries at every position except shortstop, the one place the Twins could not afford an injury. That's because Zoilo Versalles was perhaps the best shortstop in baseball. He had a reputation for not always playing hard, but Billy Martin, who was in his first year of coaching third base for the Twins, took care of that. Billy coaxed, praised, scolded Versalles through 162 games. Tugged Zoilo right into an MVP season. It was the first time a Latin American had won the award. Zoilo played at maybe 150 pounds, but in 1965 he hit 19 home runs, led the league in runs scored, doubles, triples, and total bases. He played some of the best shortstop that fans ever saw. He stung the ball in the World Series and led the Twins in batting. Twice, Los Angeles Dodgers third baseman robbed him of game-changing hits. He was only 25 that October and never again came close to duplicating that season. But it was the kind of season you would sell your soul for. Jim Thielman, author, Cool of the Evening.
Versalles, along with Camilo Pascual, was part of a very strong Cuban connection fostered by the Griffith organization. Versalles was a most valuable player, Pascual an all-star, but the best of the bunch was a three-time batting champion who wore number 6.
1964, 4 games into the schedule, rookie Tony Oliva was batting .474. Most recent hit, a 10th inning home run that gave the Twins a victory in Washington. Twins went to Detroit. The opposing starter was the veteran Phil Regan. Oliva ripped a single through the box in the first inning, came up in the second. Regan threw his best fastball right at Oliva's right temple. Tonio climbed to his feet, brushed himself off, dug into the left-handed batter's box, and with the next swing, hit a line drive over the head of Don Demeter and into the distant spaces of straightaway center field. Raced to third, demonstrating to Phil Regan with every step that the Twins' latest, greatest son of Cuba could not be intimidated. Tony Oliva became the first rookie to win an American League batting title. Won another one in 1965, the third in 1971, even though he was limping on a damaged right knee. He was batting .377 in late June when he dove for a line drive in Oakland and gave an excruciating twist to a knee that already had undergone surgeries. Played only 10 games in 1972 and then played out his career as a designated hitter, ripping line drives and then lurching toward first base on his one healthy leg. Tony Oliva was the best combination hitter, power and contact, in the Twins' 50 seasons. And there's no doubt that just 2 or 3 more healthy seasons would have allowed Oliva to cruise into the Hall of Fame and join Harmon Killebrew, his partner, with the Twins' fearsome KO punch.
You're watching the 50 Greatest Minnesota Twins on Fox Sports North.
The 50 Greatest Twins on Fox Sports North is brought to you by AT&T. Find out what's possible with the nation's fastest mobile broadband network. AT&T, rethink possible. By the fast, reliable, secure, heavy-duty internet from Qwest. By Lincoln Mercury. Visit your local Lincoln Mercury dealer or go to experiencelm.com. And by Sony, Make Believe.
The list of the 50 greatest Minnesota Twins includes 6 managers, 4 of them called the shots from the first base dugout at Metropolitan Stadium.
Sam Mele provided a fire as well as a calming influence as manager of the Minnesota Twins in the 1960s. Mele had played for the team when it was in Washington. Though known as a fine glove man, he had his moments with the bat, once driving in 6 runs in 1 inning and also tying for the American League lead in doubles in 1951. He became a scout for the Griffith organization in 1959 and was a coach when the Twins came to Minnesota 2 years later. Soon after, he was the manager, the second youngest in the league. Mele worked with owner Calvin Griffith in rebuilding the team, combining rookies and veterans and helping the team move up in the standings, finishing second only to the mighty Yankees in 1962. 3 years later, the Twins ended the Yankee dynasty by winning the American League pennant and got to enjoy a champagne shower after clinching the pennant in Washington. The Sporting News named Mele the Manager of the Year in the Major Leagues. Stu Thornley, Minnesota baseball historian.
Are you leaving, Billy Martin? Seems that life is just a game. You have managed to keep winning, just to lose what you have gained. It's back to
There are so many great Billy Martin stories, it's hard to believe he managed the Twins for only 1 year. It was the first of 9 different managing positions with 5 different clubs. There were no mixed reviews on Martin. Umpires hated him, and the feeling was mutual. Owners tolerated him, at least for a while. Fans adored him. The Twins won 97 games under him in 1969, up from 79 the year before. Things were never dull. He knocked out starting pitcher Dave Boswell outside a Detroit bar. Boswell responded by winning 20 games for the first and only time in his career. He turned Rod Carew loose on the base paths, and Carew repaid him with 7 steals of home plate. Harmon Killebrew had 14 steals in his major league career, and 8 of them came in 1969. Tony Oliva led the league in hits. Carew won the batting title, and Killebrew, the MVP, led in home runs, RBIs, and walks. Jim Perry joined Boswell as a 20-game winner, and attendance improved by more than 200,000 fans. But when the team lost in 3 straight to the Orioles in the first playoff of division winners, owner Calvin Griffith fired Martin. Despite the pleas of fans to bring Billy back, Martin was done, and the Twins were about to embark on a journey of frustration that would last throughout the decade of the 1970s. Dave Mona, Minneapolis Tribune.
Frank Quilici found a place in our hearts the day he wrote his name in the record book.
Quilici will be satisfied with a double.
In Game 1 of the 1965 World Series, Quilici became the 13th player in postseason history to get 2 hits in a single inning, a notable highlight in an 8-2 beating of Don Drysdale and the Dodgers. A disciple of Billy Martin, Quilici played Twins baseball long before the phrase was even invented. He was a hard-working utility guy who maximized his skills with a heads-up game built on hustle and true grit. Frank was only 33 when owner Calvin Griffith made him the Twins manager in the summer of 1972, a job he held through the 1975 season. From there, he entered the broadcast booth, talking baseball to the fans who found a place in their hearts for Frank Quilici. Paul Hipp, Fox Sports North.
Gene Mauch may well have been baseball's greatest tactician ever. He knew the game's nuances like a mother knows her newborn baby. But no man will ever earn a more ambivalent epitaph: the greatest manager who never won a pennant. Oh, he came close, and that was the painful part. He won 2 division titles and 1,902 games in 26 years, but it was often the losses that people remembered. They remembered 1964, when Mauch managed the Phillies to a 6.5-game lead with 12 games left. Philadelphia lost 10 straight, and the Cardinals took the pennant on the last day of the season. They remembered 1986, when Mauch's Angels were within 1 out of a trip to the World Series. The Angels lost a 3-run lead, and then 2 more games to the Red Sox. I remember a night in Boston, a cold and miserable night, August 15, 1979. The Twins had traded away Rod Carew that year and got very little in return. Expectations were modest. But it was a classic Mauch season, a ragtag assortment of sore arms and callow batters, with Mauch keeping them in the chase seemingly by sheer force of will. But on this night, the Twins desperately needed a win. They'd lost the first 2 games of the road trip and needed to salvage the final game of the series. The Twins got behind early, but tied the game at 5 in the 8th inning. Mauch, as he always did in times of late-inning crises, called on reliever Mike Marshall. Marshall was brilliant that year, but in this night Boston scored 4 runs, capped by a 2-run homer by the aging Carl Yastrzemski. The Red Sox had swept. I tiptoed into the tiny visiting manager's office after the game and waited for Mauch to say something. Mauch's third base coach and friend, Carl Keel, was the only other person in the room. The Twins had to pack up and head to New York, a trip that Mauch now dreaded. Keel told Mauch that the bus to the airport would be leaving soon. Mauch, wearing only a jockstrap and smoking a cigarette, stared at the floor, and finally he sighed. He thought of his young players. Kids, really. Most of them would have many more chances. For them it was a bad loss, not a tragedy. They'd be listening to boomboxes on the bus. There would be banter, frivolity. Mauch looked up at Keel. "Call me a cab," he said. "I can't listen to the sounds of joy tonight."
You're watching the 50 Greatest Minnesota Twins on Fox Sports North. The Twins won the Western Division Championship in 1970. While it was their last title at Metropolitan Stadium, the 70s featured some memorable players, 20-game winners, an RBI leader, and a Rookie of the Year. And 2 of those stars returned to Minnesota to become world champions in 1987.
His pedigree all but predicted Major League stardom. When Roy Smalley was traded to the Twins in 1976, he arrived as the son of a former major leaguer with the same name and the nephew of his new manager, Gene Mauch. Born and raised in Southern California, Smalley took to the Twin Cities as quickly as the Twins fans took to him. A franchise that had said goodbye to Harmon Killebrew and Tony Oliva and was soon to say goodbye to Rod Carew, the Twins were looking for someone to step to the plate and anchor the lineup. Smalley did that, particularly in his magical year of 1979. A torrid first half not only sent Smalley to his first and only All-Star game, he went as the fans' choice at shortstop. On an otherwise faceless roster, Smalley became the nucleus of a team that ended up saying goodbye to outdoor baseball and Metropolitan Stadium and welcomed indoor baseball at the Metrodome. Traded from the Twins in 1982, Smalley was traded back just in time. He was a key member of the 1987 World Champion Twins and finished his career winning a World Series ring. Dick Bramer, Twins broadcaster.
In the mid-70s, the Twins had one of baseball's best offenses. The fact that they finished around 500 every year was due to inconsistency from their pitchers. The exception was Dave Goltz. Goltz's road to the pros sounds like a mythical legend, but it is in fact true. A native son, Dave grew up in western Minnesota in the tiny town of Rothsay, population 497. Longtime Twins scout Angelo Giuliani went to see him throw in a Legion tournament, but Dave's team got beat before he got there. Since he was in the area, Giuliani stopped at the Goltz house, had Dave step out and throw in the front yard. Soon after, Goltz was a member of the Twins organization. As a teammate, Dave was low-key and quiet, with a calm demeanor. Those same qualities helped make him an excellent pitcher, no matter the situation. He was even-keeled and unflappable. He was a defender's dream, pitching with great command, working quickly and efficiently on the mound. An innings eater with a solid fastball and an out-pitch that was ahead of its time, the knuckle curve. In the mid-70s, he was the ace of the staff. He had 5 straight years with 14 or more victories, highlighted by 1977 when he led the league with 20 wins and had 19 complete games. Roy Smalley, Goltz's shortstop.
As the amazing story of the Miracle Mets unfolded in the fall of 1969, Minnesotans were keenly interested in one of their own. Born in Appleton, Minnesota, population maybe 3,500, Jerry Koosman made it big on the New York stage, winning 19 games in 1968 and 2 games in the 1969 World Series. Jerry was on the mound for the miracle finish. Though he spent his off seasons in Chaska, it was a decade later when he truly came home, traded to the Twins prior to the 1979 season. He was 36 now, and the adjectives fit: crafty left-hander and savvy veteran who still had the stuff to anchor a pitching staff. As the cries of "Coos" rumbled through Metropolitan Stadium, Koosman won 20 games, reaching the milestone with a shutout on the final day of the season. The following year, he won 16 more and tied the team record with 15 strikeouts in a game. The Twins player representative during the strike-shortened season of 1981, Jerry was traded again that summer, but before he left, one of the heroes of the Miracle Mets became a hero in his home state too. Paul Hipp, Fox Sports Network.
Larry Hisle earned his 50 greatest Twins stripes with 5 stellar seasons in Minnesota, but his achievements have continued off the field ever since. Hisle's greatest moments weren't always appreciated at Metropolitan Stadium. As an All-Star in 1977, he hit .302, clubbed 28 home runs, and led the league in RBIs with 119. But Rod Carew's flirtation with the .400 batting average dominated the headlines that year, and not even Hisle and Carew could carry the Twins past a 4th-place finish. But Hisle's contribution extended way beyond the batter's box. He had already emerged as a quiet leader off the field, where he earned special marks for mentoring a gifted but anxious young outfielder named Lyman Bostock. Hisle was an ideal role model for young players. An orphan at age 11, he beat the odds to escape poverty and made it to the major leagues with Philadelphia at the age of 21. Signed by the Brewers in 1978, he again made the All-Star team, but after a 14-year career in the big leagues, a lot of folks in Milwaukee know him more as a mentor, especially for kids at risk. As the director of youth outreach for the Brewers, You might catch him at Miller Park, but you're more likely to see him at a boys or girls club, a school, or even a prison. It's been more than 30 years since he led the league in RBIs, but Larry Hisle is still an all-star. Mike Gelfand, Minneapolis Tribune.
Lyman Bostock, maybe my favorite twin. First player I met when I arrived in Orlando for my first spring training on the baseball beat. Lyman was in the hotel lobby, lighting up the place with his grin. Don't know whether to laugh or cry when I think about it. That was 1977. He was a veteran now, a season and a half under his belt. He'd go on to hit .336 that year, second in the league to his teammate, Rod Carew. He was a survivor in all the fortunate and unfortunate senses. He'd grown up poor and fatherless, first in Birmingham, then Gary, Indiana, and from there to L.A. His father, a Negro League player, left the family when Lyman was 4. It still bothered him, but it never made him bitter. And Lyman made good decisions. He adopted Larry Hisle, another terrific Twins outfielder, as his mentor. Lyman was in good hands. When the season was over, Lyman, now a free agent, signed a sweet contract with the Angels. He'd never be poor again. He'd been playing for the Angels for a month when he did the second most memorable thing in his life. Hitting .150, he tried to give his monthly salary back. The Angels said no, so Lyman gave the money to charity. And then he started working on that average. It was up to .296 on September 23rd, 1978. The Angels were in Chicago that day. Lyman could have kicked back with his teammates after the game, enjoying the spoils of his success, but he didn't. Instead, he went to visit friends and relatives in Gary, a dangerous place then and now. Lyman was riding in his uncle's car when the shot was fired, meant for another passenger. 2 hours later, Lyman was gone. And the ugliest part of it all is that for many, Lyman Bostock is remembered not for the way he lived, but for the way he died.
For many years, Baltimore's Brooks Robinson was the gold standard at third base. In 1979, a Twins rookie, John Castino, drew comparisons to the longtime Oriole star. Defensively, John was more than Major League ready for a full-time job at the hot corner. As it turned out, his bat was too. Castino hit .285 and shared the Rookie of the Year award with Toronto's Alfredo Griffin. The following season was even better, a .302 batting average with 13 home runs and a league-best 340 assists at third base. In 1981, John led the league again in both triples and putouts by a third baseman. The chronic back pain would curtail his playing time and ultimately end his promising career. To make way for Gary Gaetti, John moved to second base and he started 132 games there in 1983 when he hit .277. But the back pain could not be eased without surgery. And in 1984, just 5 years removed from the Rookie of the Year award, John Castino, only 29 years old, played his last Major League game. Paul Hipp, Fox Sports North.
I first heard the name Bert Blyleven from Calvin Griffith, then owner and general manager of the Twins. It was in the late 1960s. Calvin said he had this young Dutch kid that had the best curveball he'd seen since Camilo Pascual. Calvin knew I'd have special interest in Bert because I was also of Dutch heritage. I'll never forget Bert's debut in Washington in 1970. He gave up a home run to Lee May, the first batter he faced, and then proceeded to pitch flawless baseball for 7 innings. Ron Peronoski saved the game, and Bert had his first of many wins as a twin. I admired his work habits and desired to improve, and envied that curveball he had. I remember a Twins executive said to me, "Can you work with Bert and get him to quit sticking his tongue out when he throws the curveball?" My answer was, if the hitter is looking at his tongue, he won't pick up the ball. And if he throws it for a strike, not many are going to hit it even if they know it's coming. In reflecting on his career, I know if he compiled the record he did in New York, he'd already be in the Hall of Fame. I'm confident he'll get there next year. He certainly deserves it when you look at his 287 wins, 60 shutouts, more than 3,000 strikeouts, 242 complete games, and 2 world championships. It's amusing to me to see what a popular TV announcer he has become with his trademark Circle Me Bert for Twins fans, and how he became such a prankster, a master at the lost art of giving his teammates a hot foot. He's not only one of the greatest Twins ever, he is one of the greatest pitchers of all time in the major leagues. Congratulations, Bert. Will you circle me sometime? Jim Kaat, former teammate.
You're watching the 50 Greatest Minnesota Twins on Fox Sports North.
Farmers Insurance. At Farmers, we help you get ready. Get to know a Farmers agent today. Call 800-FARMERS or visit farmers.com, because ready feels good. By GMC, we are professional grade. By Home Furniture, there's no place like home. And by Explore Minnesota, more to explore.
For the past hour, as we've walked down memory lane, we've honored some of the 50 greatest Minnesota Twins, men who starred for the Twins the first time the Twins played outdoors. 2 of those men are honored here at Target Field, and they're also honored in Cooperstown, New York.
Rod Carew was 21 years old and coming out of Class A in 1967 when owner Calvin Griffith ordered that he open the season as a Twins second baseman. Carew hit .292 as a rookie and then fell off to .273 in 1968. He was such a proud young man that the perceived failure of his second season caused Rod to talk about quitting the game. Billy Martin became the manager in 1969 and nurtured Carew into a star. By mid-season, Rodney had tied the major league record with 7 steals of home.
Here comes Carew, the pitch, and it is not in time. The ball dropped by Pavletic, and Carew made it. Well, it ties the world record.
During my turbulent years, Billy was always there. Someone I could rely on and trust, Carew said in 1989 at the time of Martin's death. Gene Mauch arrived as Twins manager in 1976. One season later, Carew made his run at .400 and won the MVP award. He finished 1977 at .388 with 239 hits, 128 runs scored, 38 doubles, 16 triples, 14 homers, and 100 RBIs, all career highs. When Billy Martin had Rodney, he was just learning the game, Mauch said. When I got him, Rodney was a complete player. He had that wonderful, wonderful ego that you find in great players. All I did was point him toward the field. The Twins traded Carew to the Angels after the 1978 season. He did enough in his 7 seasons for the Angels to retire as number 29. But Minnesota was the home for his 7 batting titles, and it is a Twins cap that appears on Rodney Cline Carew's plaque in Cooperstown. Patrick Royce, Minneapolis Star-Tribune.
Oh, my, and imagine the season's only half over. One after another of games that go right down to the wire. So Rollins will be moving as it's 3-2 to Killebrew.
He was the Idaho strong boy, nicknamed Killer, but Minnesota nice. Through the eyes of an 8-year-old and a first-generation Twins fan, Harmon Killebrew was much more than the face of a franchise. Transplanted to the Twin Cities along with the Washington Senators, he quickly became a superhero in pinstripes and a role model to kids and parents alike. On America's newest frontier for Major League Baseball, you could find him everywhere. In a youngster's imagination, backyards and sandlots were Met Stadium in miniature. And starry-eyed children crafted homemade number 3, tried to copy his swing, and dreamed of going deep. At the dinner table, kids were told to drink their milk, to go to bed on time, and sometimes simply to do what's right. Why? Once again, to be like Harmon.
Deep is going. Number 500 for Harmon Killebrew.
As his home run numbers, all-star appearances, and an MVP award built a resume made for Cooperstown, Killebrew was a 5-foot, 11-inch giant, and the humble hero who somehow each summer took us all on a power trip. And fans of all ages, with a bleacher seat at the ballpark, ears on a transistor radio, or eyes on a black and white television, shared a common bond. No one left a Twins game if Harmon could still swing the bat one more time.
Here's the pitch. A drive deep to left. Way back. Home run. Twins win.
Paul Hipp, Fox Sports North.
Killebrew was the first star here in Twins territory, and Harmon set the stage for many others to follow. Join us again here on Fox Sports North for another one-hour special on the 50 greatest Minnesota Twins, when we celebrate the men who rocked the Metrodome, winning 2 World Championships and 7 division titles. A few of them ushered in the spectacular new era of Twins baseball here at Target Field. I'm Dick Bramer. Thanks for joining us.